I didn't click right away with my mother-in-law, Alice. She was a different kind of woman, always coiffed and decked out in dress, high heels, and stockings with a full face of makeup. I am, suffice to say, not at all like that. But we both loved her son, Russell, who became my husband, and we found common ground in books, especially the works of Willa Cather, a mutual favorite. And upon that foundation, we slowly built a friendship. The years went by and we became closer, especially as Alice began to have trouble dealing with Medicare and the rest of the healthcare bureaucracy. I didn't know much more than her, but I was pushy and a bit computer savvy, so I was able to exert enough pressure after a million phone calls to get her the help she needed. Eventually, she was getting visits from a doctor and other helpers in her little apartment. When Alice went to the hospital for a procedure that went badly, she ended up in a nursing home. And then, after a million more phone calls, in a nice long-term care facility in Mission Hills, a very green and leafy neighborhood in San Diego near us. Alice didn't get better, but she didn't get worse, and her mind was still as sharp as broken glass. I was editor-in-chief of a small publishing house out in East San Diego at the time, so I traveled across the country twice daily, usually by bus and trolley, occasionally by car. We'd inherited Alice's 1968 Mustang from her a year earlier when it was clear she could no longer drive, and Russell had driven to Carlsbad to see her weekly. Now he commuted by bike to see her daily, and I sometimes used the Mustang when it wasn't in the shop. The Friday morning he got the call that Alice had suffered what they thought was a stroke. The car was in the shop, so Russell pedaled off to see her and called me at work. It went to my voicemail because I was in a meeting, so I called him back before lunch and he explained that Alice was unconscious and not expected to wake up. She might hang on for days or weeks, no one knew. But they told him she might be able to hear voices, so he was planning to stay in her room all day and talk to her. I offered to come right away, but he said it would be better if I came after work, as he'd need to take a break and get something to eat. Also, he reminded me, the Mustang needed to be picked up from the shop. If not, we'd be without a car all weekend. I called them and they agreed to have the car ready at 5, and just after 4, I caught a ride downtown from a colleague. The traffic, it was Friday afternoon, was terrible, but I managed to get to the shop before it closed, write the check, and get the car. I drove over to Mission Hills, my heart pounding, feeling guilty for running late. Walking into Alice's room, I found her looking like a wax figure propped up in a hospital bed. I went over and embraced Russell. He explained he'd been talking to her for hours, but she hadn't made a sound or moved a muscle. I told him to take a break, but he sat back down looking numb, and I went over to sit beside my mother-in-law. Her thin white hair was mussed, and I stroked it into place and kissed her cheek. Then I leaned close, put my mouth right near her ear, and spoke, "It's okay, Alice. I'm here. I'll take good care of Russell. You don't have to worry. I love him with all my heart, and I'll always be here for him." A sudden, raspy intake of breath a moment later surprised me, and I pulled back to look at her. There was still no expression on her face, but as I watched, she exhaled and relaxed into what looked like a peaceful sleep. I waited. She did not take another breath. Russell joined me at her bedside, both of us in shock, looking at her and then at each other. It was clear this strong-willed woman had been waiting to depart, to move on, and by assuming responsibility for her beloved son, I'd given her permission to leave us.